Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. Together we're uncovering the human experience and exploring physical, mental, emotional and spiritual stories with me, your host, Amy Ravel. Today's episode is quite a emotional episode, I guess, for me, because I'm having a conversation with a lifelong friend who has been such a significant part of my early years and growing up. She made a courageous decision to get married and move abroad, and I don't hold that against her, but I'm really pleased that after almost 30 years of friendship that we're still friends and we're able to have these open conversations with each other and share with you our journeys. So my friend Simi Krishnan got married and moved abroad. Her life changed. Lots of different things happen. Now, when life changes and we make decisions that result in things almost being taken out of our control and we weren't really ready for that, we begin to look at different things to try and solve these challenges, to try and solve these problems, right? But then when life also throws unexpected curveballs at you, how do you deal with them? So Simi's story is one that many of you may connect to and resonate with. She found the man of her dreams, moved abroad, and then things became quite tricky because the freedoms that she was used to weren't apparent and weren't available anymore. And she had to work her relationships up with different people and a new support network. She had to work it from the ground up again. Now, we take these things for granted when possibly we talk about them, but when you have to live it and you have to find new friends after having such a close network, such a close community of not only friends but family around you, and then moving somewhere where you know no one apart from one person, how do you navigate that? Then when things change and you experience loss and grief, how do you deal with that? My conversation with my good friend Simi is open and honest and frank. We both are sharing our experiences with each other. I'm really hoping that you'll be able to learn something and also that you'll be able to gather some tools here that will help you be closer to the true you. Hi, Simi. How are you?
Hi, Amy. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited. I'm really, really intrigued because let's kind of let it out there. We have known each other pretty much our whole lives, right?
Pretty much. I wouldn't say since the womb, but pretty much post that, I think. I mean, we grew up on the same street. We went to school together. We hung out together until I ended up moving across the pond and to the US. And I miss those days. I do. And we've known each other for a long time, a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hold it against you that you left and kind of moved to another country. I have no bones there, but yes. So we have a lot of shared life experiences, so many shared laughs, and now we're in a different part of our kind of lives and our existence and our worldly responsibilities. So I'm really, really excited to be able to ask you some of these questions that are quite probing and in some ways are almost like, I think they kind of make you stop and really think in a way that you probably haven't really been forced to think about unless you're put in a situation where you have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm coming from. But what I'll do is I'll kickstart with some of the questions and then please just feel free to talk. It's your story.
Thank you.
So,
I'm excited.
Yeah, good. So what in your experience, what 3 life experiences have you had and that have had the most significant impact on you, on how you think, on how you feel, and how you behave? And what did these experiences teach you about yourself?
That's a great question. And I would definitely say 3 of the most important life experiences to me that have really been significant in shaping who I am are firstly moving to the US. And I mentioned that, I'm a born and bred Londoner. Moving here was a huge, huge change, a huge shift in my thinking. Secondly, having a child. Now, that might sound really cliche, but that kind of leads on to my third life experience, which is losing a child. So it really, really made me understand how important and how significant having a child and bringing someone into the world was when you actually end up losing one. So while having a child, again, may sound cliche, it's definitely been a huge impact on shaping who I am, not only as a mother, as a wife, but as a human in overall. So when I moved to the US, it was a real culture shock for me. I, as I said, I've been a London girl my whole life. I've had people around me every time I'm anywhere. I've never even had a real alone moment. Social butterfly is how I used to refer to myself. And then I moved here. I had no friends. I had no means of transport. I had no job. Now, coming from this space where I had family, I had friends, I had everything around me, and like picking up the phone, I could do anything I wanted. I could go anywhere I wanted. I could do it any job that I wanted. Not having that when I moved here and started the second chapter of my life it was just derailing, because you kind of you become like an invalid. I was stuck at home because I couldn't drive. I couldn't drive because we only had one car at the time. And in the States, we were living in Chicago, you cannot go anywhere without a car. And so literally I was stuck at home from the moment my husband went to work till he came back. I literally had to rely on him to go and get a bottle of milk. It was brutal. And I'm not used to that. I wasn't used to that. And it was a very, very, very hard time. I mean, eventually that changed. I made a circle.
Can I?
Yes.
Sorry, just to add. So, when did you move to the States? What year was that?
I moved to the US in 2007. So it's been a
Mm-hmm.
while now. It's been a while now. So about what, 13 years maybe? I think 13 years, 14 years. So it's been a while. But that whole transition for me to finally kind of have people that I can rely on took about a good 6 to 7 years. It wasn't quick, because
Mm,
we also moved around a lot. My husband was a consultant, so we used to end up moving around a lot. So there was never any stability, and it was very difficult. And that kind of leads on, I think, to the second one of the most significant events in my life, which was having a child. So when I had my daughter, we were living in Columbus, Ohio. And again, we did not really have a close knit set of friends. I mean, my family, my mom came over from the UK. My sister lives in Toronto. She was there every weekend. It's only a 5 hour drive. So she was there every weekend to help me along with my pregnancy, which was great. But I still didn't have any friends, because it's really difficult when you're in your late 20s trying to make friends. I mean, it was hard enough as a teenager, but in your late 20s, as an immigrant to a new country, you speak differently from everyone else. They're fascinated by you, but they don't really know if they want to be your friend. It's really difficult. So I took that in my stride. I was like, okay, whatever, it will happen when it happens. But I went through that event by myself, which it was sad, because I never had like people like you around who I should have. And it was it was
it's
unnerving.
lonely.
It's so lonely. And more than lonely, it's so heartbreaking, because
Mm,
these are things that you need to celebrate with people that you love, right? Yeah, my sister was there. Yeah,
absolutely.
my mom was there, but where are my friends, right? I didn't have any. And it was it was a very daunting time. And, but then I also, that changed me, because I had this, little bundle, and she became my world. Like my daughter became my world. And that really, really changed that sadness that I felt when I first moved here. I mean, I wasn't sad because, I was here. I love it here. It's great. And I love my husband. I absolutely love him. I would never have moved countries if it wasn't for him. But it wasn't as lonely, right? She kind of filled this gap for me that I was really needing. And she really helped me with
Mm,
that.
hmm.
And, you know, post her being born, I lost my dad, which was a very, very, again, traumatic time. But I feel that having my little girl really helped push me through. It gave me something to live for. It gave me something to believe in. And it helped me believe in the goodness that was still there. And that was definitely why I refer to that as a life-changing event, a very significant event in my life. While cliche, it really, really was a important part of who I am today. And that kind of leads on to my third life-changing event, which was losing a child. So after Sabi was born, my daughter, we had a little tumultuous time. As I mentioned, my dad passed away. Post that, I had a diagnosis of, stage 1 cervical cancer, which was, again, a very traumatic time. I had to have, I had to have my treatment, and post the treatment, we decided that, now was the time, if we could, to try for another child. We were told there'll be no
Sure.
complications. So we did it, we did it. And unfortunately, it was a god awful pregnancy. It was a terrible, it was just a terrible time from August 2012 through January 2013, probably the worst months of my life because my pregnancy was bad. I delivered my son at 23 weeks, and it was brutal. He passed away at a week old. And that, again, is a significant event in my life because it reshaped my thinking and my outlook on everything that I knew and everything that I thought I knew into something completely different. So, and that, again, like I said, was something that I never in my life expected to happen to me. You hear about it happening to other people, but you don't expect it to happen to you. You don't even really expect it to happen to anyone you know, right? You expect it to happen like, oh, a friend of a friend, and this happened to them. It was just so devastating. But when it happens to you, it's like, oh my God, this is my reality, right? And that reality just changes your whole outlook on how you once perceived life. And the way you once perceived life is no longer the same. It's completely different, completely. And I mean, it's kind of odd when you think about it, because while I say that shaped changed my outlook on life, I also had a very strange and I had a very bad relationship with grief because I didn't
Yeah.
own up to it. And that was definitely something that now I regret. I regret it because it took me longer to get to the place I am today. I am finally here, but I think I could have got there sooner if I had done things a different way, which I didn't.
Interesting. And then when you say relationship with grief, and again, grief in varying forms is a reality that many of us feel. It's like an inevitability in life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you say, it's the unexpected losses that are tumultuous, like overwhelming, and literally drop us to the ground because they're unexpected and
Mm-hmm.
they're not real. How did you get to that realization that you're dealing with or facing grief was actually, it wasn't dealt with? How did you come to that realization? What led you to that?
So, one of the big things that my husband and I always talk about is that I am a fantastic compartmentalizer. I can compartmentalize things till the cows come home. I know when to deal with things, I know when not to deal with things, and that included my grief. And that was a point of contention for us, for my family, because I refused to deal with my sadness. I refused to accept my sadness. And what I ended up doing, and when I said I had this bad relationship with grief, was I never had it. That relationship was non existent. I refused to succumb to the pain that I was feeling. And instead, I pretended I was fine. I pretended there was nothing wrong because I didn't want to burden people with my issues. I didn't want people to think, oh my God, she's that girl that, that lost her kid. I didn't want to have that label on me. I wanted to be the happy go lucky girl, the people pleaser, the one that doesn't have any issues, that's always fun, always ready for, having a good time. Let's go out for a drink. Let's go to a party. Simi's available. We're going to do this. We're going to get it down. We're going to have fun. Right.
Mm,
And it was a rocky road. downward facing rocky road because it was something that my husband and I did not agree on. He was ready to grieve. I was not. He ended up having to go to that grieving process alone, and I was not with him. And I regret that so badly because that's such a horrible thing for me to have done because I focused solely on how I didn't want to deal with it, not thinking that he's in the same position as me and how he may want to deal with it. Now,
Can
it took me
I
a while.
ask on
Yeah,
that point,
yeah,
do you forgive yourself now? Have
I
you
do.
learned to forgive yourself?
I
Yeah.
do. I do forgive myself. I mean, you know why? Because I've realized that the headspace that I was in at that time was, unbeknown to me at the time, part of my grieving process. I was in a phase of denial. I did not want to accept and I did not want to think, right? So I forgive myself because I know I accept my flaws. And that kind of brings me to my grieving process today. And when I had this like epiphany at my son, so post losing me and my son at 23 weeks, we did get pregnant again, which was unexpected because we both didn't want any more kids. So it was very unexpected. But when we did have Trev, it took me to this epiphany in myself. And I thought, something's not right. I knew what it was that wasn't right, but I didn't want to face up to it. But at that point, it was near his first birthday. I realized what that was and I was ready to face it. And when I was ready to face it, I was ready to embrace my sadness. And when I embraced my sadness, it really helped me come to the place that I am today. And, you ask if are we, the humankind, equipped with the tools to deal with grief and loss? And my answer to that is I believe that we are. I believe that we have the ability, but it's our conscious and it's our mind, our conscience and our mind that tells us that we can't. There's so many
Yeah.
stages of grief, right? So many. And we all go through these processes so differently. And, one person, denial may work fantastically for them. Another person, crying may work wonderfully for them. Another person working through those 7 stages that are, predefined in a book may work wonderfully for them. The point is,
Sure.
grief is so individual to every single person. What works for me is not necessarily going to work for you, but neither of them are wrong. It just means you have to find your process.
Mm.
And that's what I discovered, right? I discovered that the process that I was undertaking was not right for me. And when I finally
Mm.
discovered my process, I was able to heal while at a much slower rate. I was able to heal.
Healing and acknowledging and accepting grief is something that I think, like exactly like you say, it's such an individualized aspect of life. And even though some of us may have shared experiences, like, how we talked about you losing your dad, and, earlier this year, I lost my dad. And
Yep.
it's it's just fascinating how different stages and different outlooks in life actually help to some degree in helping you come to those terms. Can I just go back to something that you said, which I found really interesting, because you said it was the people pleasing and you didn't want to burden anyone else with your grief.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very modern human condition where we don't reach out. And do you think that came about partly because you left the UK to move to a country where building those networks had taken time, or because the nature of our relationship potentially in the past has been different, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we were always together,
Mm-hmm.
so we could deal with things head on because we had a
Mm-hmm.
network around us.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that kind of impacted how you were dealing with things and how you didn't want to really put pressure on anyone, because putting that pressure out there would mean you absolutely accepting and that was just at that stage something you just couldn't do?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You literally did. Because, like you said, I was in a space where I didn't have the ability to unload my emotional trauma onto people that didn't really see me as an emotional wreck, because I was a train wreck, and they did not see me as that. I had a very good facade. I had a very good way of hiding what I was feeling. And I was never perceived as the, emotional, tumbling kind of wall of dust that I was inside. And I think that burdening or putting that onto someone and having them take responsibility for my feelings was something that I wasn't ready to do. And even to this day, I feel that I have an extremely close knit circle of people, right? That I share every single thing with, every single thing. And honestly, I did not really know them at that time. And I feel like if I did, my journey would have been smoother. But at that point in time, the ability to share was so difficult for me because I had this, you know, perception of myself. People had this perception of me that I was like great. I had a really good job. I had like, a great husband. I had like, he like spoils me rotten. My job was great. Everything was great. So do they really need to know that my life really isn't great? You know what I mean? And
Totally,
and it's
totally
just
get that.
keeping up with the Joneses, right? And that's one thing I really regret. I mean, when I say I have a regret in life, that is one, because I feel I lost myself. I really lost myself. And I that's not me. You've known me my whole life. I am a pretty headstrong person, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
gosh, yes.
yeah, right. And I had lost that, right? I had lost that ability to stand up for myself. I had lost that ability to, air out my problems and kind of walk through them and talk through them. And we've done that so many times in the past. And I couldn't do it. And I realized that that was me trying to deal. And that's kind of when I go back to that's how I process that grief. And that could work fine for somebody else, but that was so not the right process for me. And, it's funny because when I come to where I am now, like 7 years later, I am in such a different space mentally to where I was then. And that's not only because I was grieving, I'm still grieving today. I'm never going to stop grieving. But I've just learned different tactics to deal with that grieving in a way that works for my psyche, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that absolutely does. And so how did you work out what those tactics are? Because the question I get asked a lot from people is, how did you cope? How did you find those things that that you kind of made sense to you, that you worked out were working? And my take on this is very simple, is if you don't know yourself, if you don't find that and you're not true to it, you can try everything and nothing's going to work. So that's my take on it. I'd like to know what tactics you kind of discovered, how you found them, and what works for you.
And again, you got the point straight from me. I needed to find myself. That was a huge part of learning how to cope, because I had lost myself. I had completely lost myself. I'd forgotten who I was. I'd forgotten how I was. I'd forgotten how to be. And I had to do some serious soul searching. So I had that epiphany that I knew things weren't right, but that's not enough. Things don't change overnight, right? I had to really rearrange my head. I had to rearrange my thought process. I had to rearrange everything. So for once, I was putting myself first. And the reason to me that that has been such an imperative part of my journey is because when I used to keep putting myself on the back burner, I was not giving myself to my family, to my husband, to my friends. I was not being true to anyone, least of all myself. So putting myself first and foremost, Simi is most important for the first time in like my 39 years of existence. It was such an eye-opening feeling to understand what it was that I wanted, not what society expected of me, not what my friends expected of me, not what my family expected, not even what my husband expected of me, because he expects nothing of me, right? He literally expects nothing of me. He just wants me to be happy, and I was not happy. And finding myself, finding my joy, finding my hurt helped me understand how I needed to deal with it. And one of the biggest tactics for me is letting myself be. There was this point where when I used to feel sad, I used to distract myself. I say, no, I don't want to think about this. Let's just go for a drive. Let me do some, put some music on. No, I don't do that anymore. If I'm sad, I cry. I cry sometimes for 2 to 3 hours on end, and that's okay. I'm okay with that because at that point in my life, I need to cry. So I cry. Once I finish crying, it may take 10 minutes, it may take 3 hours. I feel relieved that I cried because that was what I needed at that point in time. I don't feel guilty for laughing. I don't feel guilty for being happy. I feel content with who I am, if any of that makes sense.
It absolutely does. It's ultimately giving yourself to yourself, right?
Yeah. And it's so hard to explain that because a lot of people think that, oh my God, you put yourself first, you don't care about anyone around you. And I'm like, no, actually, on the contrary, the fact that I'm putting myself first means I can love everyone so much better.
Yes. There is this challenge, isn't there? And I think it kind of stems from, there's a very cultural baggage around this,
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective. And even though there are, in Gujarati, there are sayings that, kind of translate to something along the lines of, if you can't feed yourself first or do something for yourself first, you'll never be able to do it for anyone else. When actually, what that translates to is that it's on a much deeper level, right? Is if you can't be you and be true to you, you're
Mm-hmm.
doing a huge disservice to everybody around you, not just
Yep.
yourself.
Yep.
And especially, like you said, when you become a parent, when you have chosen to be in a relationship, a long-term relationship with someone, we all have our family connections, whether we, what's that word, like them or not. They're a
Right,
reality
right.
of our
Yep.
life, right?
Yep.
So the whole selfishness around putting you first is something that I have found quite interesting, because that also, so from my experience, when I was at my lowest, I would look at my children and I couldn't justify living for them,
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't bring myself to live what I hadn't achieved through them either, which again is a very normal thing to do in society. If you haven't achieved something, you want the best for your children. But
Mm-hmm.
on the flip, and I can imagine that from a cultural sense, when people begin to understand that, oh my God, she couldn't even live for her children, how selfish was she?
Mm-hmm.
That actually is really harmful. It's very toxic, because there's no realization for that person as a person. It's just he or she is a mother or a father or a
Mm-hmm.
this. But ultimately, we're people, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
spiritual entities. We need to be
Mm-hmm.
nourished and fulfilled too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's my take on things.
And I agree with you. Specifically, you said that, if, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that, where you felt that you couldn't live for your children. That is a huge red flag right there, right? You were not nourishing or nurturing yourself enough that you did not feel the need to go on. And it wasn't, I don't even think of it as being about your children. It's about you, right? Because you are so down because you have not given yourself the attention, the love, the wellness that you need to bring yourself up to a point where living for your children is not a choice that you make. It's just something you do because you don't even think about it as an option to not do, It's
Mm-hmm.
thinking of giving up your life means you're at a point where, to me, I don't understand this concept when people say that's a selfish, easy way out. No. If someone is in that state of mind, they believe that they are no longer worthy of anyone's attention, of anyone's worry, of anyone's anything. That's why they're in that state. It's nothing to do with being selfish. It's nothing to do with taking an easy way out. Killing yourself is not an
Absolutely.
easy way out. It's not an easy way out. It's so final.
I totally agree. And you're
Yeah.
right. It's getting to a point where you're either going to go to the other side or
Mm-hmm.
you're going to come back from it. And so I'm really, I totally resonate with so much of what you're saying. And I know that so many people out there will be able to connect with this totally.
Mm-hmm.
And you've kind of touched on the fact that your experiences have totally shaped you as a person
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately led you to find you. And what I'm interested in is, can you kind of describe what have been defining moments of happiness for you and where you have been in an absolute kind of state of acceptance in these moments and in your life? Because I feel like we are conditioned to believe that happiness is constantly achievable. And actually, coming from me, having gone to this extreme and come back, it was realizing that happiness is acceptance of moments and that moments don't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
So
That
I'd like your view on that.
that is such a great explanation because I totally agree. If I say to you, I'm happy right now, yes, I am in this moment. But that doesn't mean in 20 minutes when I go to give my kids dinner, I'm going to be happy because I probably won't.
Something's going to happen, right?
Yeah, something's going to happen. But yeah, it's fleeting moments. And I think, for example, my husband surprised me with a week away in Jamaica for our 10-year anniversary.
Oh,
And
lovely.
yeah, it was amazing. And he organized the kids to go and stay with my sister for the week. So it was just me and him. And it was amazing because, firstly, it was about us as a unit, right? He did not define me as his wife or as the parent of Savi and Triv. It was me, what I wanted to do. He organized it and he took me away. That week was blissful. It was so relaxing, so stress free. It was amazing. That was definitely a fantastic moment of happiness for me because, and not moment, that was a week of happiness. I mean, obviously, I
A
was
week?
not, I mean,
Forget a moment. I love
it
it.
was freaking amazing. But the thing is, it was like, again, we're going to have our ups and downs, right? It's not going to be perfect. But that moment when he surprised me with the tickets and, I was swept away, it was just like, oh my God, is this happening? Like, this is amazing. And the fact that I was being recognized as being me and not like this structure of society of being a mother or a wife or a daughter, whatever it is that I was, it was just for being me. That was just such a fantastic feeling. And that moment was definitely one that I cherish, definitely. And
Um,
another one I think that I would say is definitely a huge moment of happiness for me was when my daughter defined me as her role model.
oh, that's lovely.
It really, really was. She did a speech for school and she had to talk about who her role model was. A lot of the kids said, Hillary Clinton, some said Taylor Swift, it was like all over the place, but she talked about her mom. And that was a huge deal for me because I felt like she saw me as a person, not only her mother, but also somebody that she really looks up to and wants to emulate.
Mm.
So that was a really, really, and that was definitely a moment that defined my happiness. I was so ecstatic.
Because she's seen you as a complete person, not just
Yeah,
her mum. And
yeah,
that matters.
it really does. It's just such a, really try to have our relationship be where she is open with me. She can have these candid conversations with me. So I'm very open with her. I don't really treat her. I mean, obviously we have restrictions. Obviously we have, very kind of we have rules and stuff, but it's very much more open. And she, all her friends call me the cool mom. They want to hang out at our house because I try to be the mom friend, as she refers to me. I'm the mom friend. So it's like And I'm okay with that because, if the kids are hanging out in my house, I know exactly what they're doing. So I'm totally okay with that. But it was really important for me. And it was such a happy moment to hear her say that, that she sees me as a role model. And, it wasn't even about my job. It wasn't about me being her mom. It was just about how I am with other people. She really respected me, which was a big deal for me.
That's lovely. I love those
Yeah,
moments.
I do too. It's like, it goes back to that defining moment of becoming a parent, right? You never expect, everything is so unexpected,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. And
Yes.
just on the note of parenthood,
Mm-hmm.
culturally and some societal pressures tell us that we have to condition our children to fit into these societal structures, and that they must achieve, they must strive for the best. And you are living in a society, in a country where these values are core values, where it's a very, you must, like you said, keeping up with the Joneses. In order to be the best, you have to be earning a certain amount, you have to be doing a certain amount, you have to be achieving a certain level of grades. And all those
Mm-hmm.
things are used to kind of value a person.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of balance that? Because I have a very unconventional take on these things, which
Mm-hmm.
has gotten me into a fair bit of, I want to say, hot water with people who don't necessarily agree. But
Mm-hmm.
hey, they don't have to live with me, so it's cool.
I'm
So
with you.
I'd like to know how you balance that. Yeah.
So it's funny you say that because so I live in an area in Chicago called Naperville. So Naperville is known as, like, I think it's one of the top 5 places in the US to raise your kids. Okay, so it's a really fantastic area. The schools are like Ivy League feeders here, right? So if you are not getting A pluses, which actually they don't even have A pluses anymore, they have O's, which is called outstanding. Right, so A pluses don't. If you don't get A plus, you're doing really badly. So you have to get an O. So if you're not getting O's, you're literally like, why are you even in this school district? So I totally am on that path with you right now of what you're saying, because my daughter's in middle school, which is the equivalent to 6th grade in the UK. But how it works in the US is you have elementary, middle, and high school. So she just started middle school in September. And it's tough. It's really, really tough. So I'm in that mindset that my husband and I both agree on this, that we will guide our kids to the best that they can achieve for themselves, right? I do not expect my kid to go to Harvard because, come on, I didn't. Do you know what I mean? It's like I cannot put that kind of pressure on my child. The most important thing to me is that my child is happy, but that doesn't
Yes.
mean that they don't work to their best ability, right? You
Yeah.
have to strive, you have to work hard at whatever you do. If you don't succeed, that's totally fine, right? I don't expect you to be like an astrophysicist, right? At the age of 13, like some of these kids are, by the way. Like, I don't expect that. It's insane. But, I think there's one child from my daughter's school that actually got pre accepted to Harvard because he's like insanely smart. But that's how bad it is here. And so I keep telling my daughter, I'm like, that's okay. That doesn't mean the way, just because someone else is successful, it doesn't mean you're failing, right? And that's one really important thing that I really make sure both my kids know, because the success rate is so high here. You are never going to beat that, because I don't put my kids in any tuition or any extracurricular math or English activities. I don't, because they don't enjoy it and I'm not going to force it on them, right?
Yeah.
They're going
Yeah.
to do what they want to do to their best ability. They get good grades, that's all that matters to me. They get bad grades because they're not studying, that would bother me. They get bad grades because they are studying, they need help. I'll find you help, right? But this keeping up with the Joneses thing is just completely irrelevant to us. I can't, and I'm so thankful that my husband and I are on the same page on this, because we literally are just like, our kids should be happy. That pressure is so undue, because honestly speaking, taking that pressure from when we were in school, how much pressure we had to succeed.
Yes. It was tough.
It was tough. It was so tough. And the thing is, I did okay in school, but like now where I am in my life, I've got a great job. It's all through people skills that I've learned in my career. Nothing to do with my degree, nothing to do with my grades. Absolutely zero. Being a
Yeah.
human first is most important, and that's what we try to teach our kids.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And
Yeah.
I'm also grappling with this whole thing around, what you study at school, what you study at university is not eventually what you go on to kind of do in the world.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not
And
even
it's
remotely. Absolutely not.
conditioning.
Yep. It's
Yes.
such conditioning. And conditioning is something that I have such an issue with, such an issue. And it's something that we have gone back and forth about so many times, this conditioning, like even silly things like when we were growing up, wearing short skirts was frowned upon because we were conditioned to believe we shouldn't do that. Right.
Yes. Yes.
I have never not once told my child what she can or can't wear. My son wears pink shirt. He wears nail polish. He wears a pink shirt. He wears whatever the
Oh,
heck
I
he wants.
agree. I'm
Yeah.
with you there. I'm totally with you.
But if they try to do that in our age, can you imagine the backlash that they would have got, that our parents would have got?
Yeah,
It's
it
all conditioning. And I cannot
definitely tough.
stand that. And it's like, it's just, I'm just so thankful that that doesn't exist anymore. And that's, well, in our family, it's like a big deal to eliminate that as much as possible. And so you had mentioned something about material possessions versus spiritual enhancement, right? Like what's more
Yes,
important?
that's my other thing.
Yeah. And it's like, so going back to that, I mean, material possessions, like, I think it's come to a point in my life, right? If I want something, I can buy it. I don't, I don't have any, whatever I want, I can buy. Like same as like my husband and I don't even do birthday gifts anymore because I'm like, whatever. If I want it, I'll buy it. I don't need you to buy it for me, right? And it's literally come to that point. So we try and do experiences for each other on birthdays and anniversaries,
Yeah,
like like nice restaurants or vacations. Obviously not this year, but like that's kind of what our always our thing has been. Because if I want to buy something, I'm like, I don't wait for my birthday because it's we've both got good jobs. You don't really need to think about that, right? And for the kids, they've really, my husband is humongous on teaching them about financial investment, being financially sound, and how to save your money, how to invest it. And because of that, that materialistic notion has really been eliminated from them because, my daughter's 11. She doesn't have a phone. She doesn't have an iPad, right? She's
that's
probably the
unheard of.
she's the only one. Like we have a family iPad. I like it's not hers. We have a family iPad, so we have one
Mhm.
iPad for the whole family. And she doesn't have a phone. She's the only one out of every single one of her friends that doesn't have a phone. So right now, when she texts her friend, she texts from my phone.
Yep,
And
snap. I had the same.
yeah, and it's like, but she doesn't. She's like, "Can I have one soon?" I'm like, "When you go," because right now they're homeschooling, right? They're home
Mm,
learning. So I'm like,
yeah.
"When you go back to school, you're going to be going on the school bus. Yes, you can have one. I don't see the need for you to have one prior to that." She's like, "Okay, cool." She's not like, "Oh, Tegan has one, Audrey has one, Gabriella has one. Like her friends have one. I want one too." And she doesn't even ask me. So, and I think that I really believe that's because we have, like, if they want something, we get it for them. If it's like, it's not like, oh, we can't get it, like we can't get it for you, it's too expensive. It's like, if we really think it's like valid, we'll get it. But I don't see the validity of a phone at 11 years old. I can't. I
I
can't
agree.
understand it, right? And I can't understand it. And it's like, if you want to watch something on the TV, watch it so I can see what you're watching too. It's not a big deal. It's like, and that's kind of how our family's been, which has been great because they've not really asked for anything that's been extravagant. They do ask for vacations, which we're happy to spend money on. Like
I'm
whatever
totally
vacations,
with
we are
you.
so good on that. Like whatever it costs, I'm totally happy to do that. But like material possessions, no, not really. It's not really even been a thing for us, I think.
I have one last question for you,
Sure.
and that is, how has being true to you and honest to your soul made you more conscious as a being?
I think I'm more aware not only of myself, but of small changes of people that are close to me, right? So if my husband's off, I can sense it because I know how he behaves towards me, because I know myself and I know how we interact. I can sense it, and I can wear it, and I can kind of get ahead of it. If he's upset with me, I feel like I know it ahead of time. I know when my grief is coming. I sense changes in my body. I sense changes in myself, and I sense when I'm going down a spiral. So I can prepare myself for it. It doesn't hit me in the face. And I think that it's like it sounds kooky, but it's like a sixth sense that I have about myself that really puts me, I believe, with a better ability to deal with my spectrum of, like, feelings at a much better level, if that makes sense. I mean, it's really hard to quantify though, because there's so much knowing yourself, and not even knowing yourself, loving yourself is such a liberating feeling, because you literally don't care what people that don't matter to you say about you. And that was an issue I always had before. I was like, everybody loves Raymond. If someone didn't like me, I was devastated. Now, if someone doesn't like me, I'm like, thank God it's one less person to speak to. And I love that about myself, because I feel that my radar for being able to decipher people has become so much stronger, because I'm so much more aware of what my mind and my soul can take, that I know how to weed people out before they enter too deep into my life.
And that comes down to kind of getting rid of toxicity.
Yep.
That you don't need.
You got it. Exactly.
I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Eternal Paradigm. Join me next time.